The walls of the Courtomain mansion have witnessed countless family dramas over the decades, but nothing could have prepared Port Charles for the revelation that threatens to tear apart one of General Hospital's most iconic families. Monica Courtomain's so-called sister, Ronnie Bard, may not be who she claims to be, and the truth behind her sudden appearance could expose a conspiracy decades in the making, orchestrated by none other than the late Helena Cassadine herself. In the wake of Monica's unexpected passing, the Courtomain family found themselves reeling from yet another shock, the revelation that Monica had a long-lost sister. Veronica Ronnie Bard arrived in Port Charles with a compelling story of two orphan sisters separated by the foster care system, reconnected through heartfelt letters in Monica's final months. The family welcomed her with open arms, everyone except Tracy Courtomain, whose instincts told her something wasn't right about this convenient reunion. Tracy's suspicions may have been more accurate than anyone imagined. Behind Ronnie's carefully crafted facade lies a truth far more sinister than a simple inheritance scheme. According to emerging evidence, Ronnie is actually the illegitimate daughter of Helena Cassadine, born from a secret affair with Monica and Ronnie's father. Helena, the notorious matriarch of the Cassadine dynasty, orchestrated the sisters' separation when they were children, setting in motion a plan that would take decades to bear fruit. Ronnie wasn't just another orphan in the foster system, she was being groomed as a sleeper agent, a perfectly positioned pawn in Helena's endless chess game against the families of Port Charles. For years, Helena trained Ronnie in the arts of deception and espionage, instilling in her the Cassadine cunning that has terrorized Port Charles for generations. While Monica built a life as a respected physician and matriarch of the Courtomain family, her biological sister was being molded into a weapon designed to destroy everything the Courtomains had built. The separation that seemed like a tragedy of the foster care system was, in reality, a calculated move by Helena to place her operative exactly where she needed her to be. The recent gathering at the Courtomain mansion, meant to welcome Ronnie into the family fold, took a dramatic turn when tensions between Tracy and the newcomer erupted. Witnesses reported that Ronnie's behavior became increasingly erratic after her drink was seemingly tampered with, leading to a heated confrontation where she hurled insults at Tracy. The altercation reached a breaking point when Tracy, having lost all patience, threatened physical violence, only to have Ronnie fire back with a fierce command to leave, a telling moment that revealed the steel beneath her carefully constructed veneer of wounded vulnerability. But the true scope of Ronnie's deception becomes clear when we examine recent developments at Steinmauer, the maximum security prison in Switzerland where Valentine Cassadine is currently incarcerated. When Valentine received an unexpected visitor, it wasn't family or an old associate, it was Ronnie herself. Their meeting wasn't a coincidence or a case of mistaken connections. Ronnie had come seeking information about Faison's final project, a mysterious scheme that Helena had been involved with for years before her death. The connection between Ronnie, Helena, and Caesar Faison reveals a conspiracy that spans generations of Port Charles history. Faison, one of the soap's most notorious villains, had been working on a final project before his death, one that Helena Cassadine had secretly participated in from the beginning. Now, with both masterminds gone, their carefully laid plans are falling into the hands of their chosen successor, Ronnie Bard. During her meeting with Valentine, Ronnie made a stunning revelation: she carries Cassadine blood in her veins. This disclosure transforms everything we thought we knew about Monica's family history and Ronnie's motivations. Her inheritance of the Courtomain mansion wasn't the endgame, it was merely the opening move. The mansion represents just the first step in an audacious plan to seize control of the entire ELQ empire and transfer it to the Cassadine organization. The implications are staggering. ELQ International, the multinational conglomerate built by Edward Louis Courtomain, has been the foundation of the family's wealth and influence for decades. With holdings around the world and subsidiaries spanning various industries, ELQ represents not just financial power but a legacy spanning generations. If Ronnie succeeds in her mission, the Courtomains won't just lose their ancestral home, they'll lose everything Edward built, everything Monica protected, and everything that defines their place in Port Charles society. Tracy Courtomain, who has fought countless battles for control of ELQ over the years, finally finds herself vindicated in her suspicions about Ronnie. But the validation comes with a bitter realization: she may have identified the threat too late to stop it. The family is already divided, with some members continuing to trust Ronnie despite Tracy's warnings. The emotional bonds formed in the brief time since Ronnie's arrival, bonds built on sympathy for her difficult upbringing and respect for Monica's apparent wishes, now work in the infiltrators' favor. The Courtomains' greatest strength, their capacity for accepting family in all its forms, has become their greatest vulnerability. The depth of Helena's planning becomes clear when we consider the timing. The letters exchanged between Monica and Ronnie throughout Monica's final months may have been carefully manipulated, if not entirely fabricated. Some insiders speculate that Drew Quartermaine or another party might have been doctoring or completely forging the correspondence, creating a fictional relationship between the sisters that Monica herself may or may not have fully understood. If true, this means Ronnie's entire foundation in the Quartermaine family, the letters, the shared memories, even Monica's will, could be built on an elaborate deception. The question of Monica's will remain central to the unfolding drama. How did Ronnie come to inherit the Quartermaine mansion and grounds, one of the family's most valuable assets? Did Monica truly draft these provisions, or was her will altered through the machinations of those working with or manipulating Ronnie? Tracy has claimed she recognized Monica's handwriting on key documents, but handwriting can be forged, especially by someone trained in espionage as Ronnie allegedly was. Now the race is on to stop Ronnie before she can complete her mission. Jason Morgan and Dante Falconeri, despite their complicated history and current tensions, must find a way to work together. These two men, who have been at odds over various issues including the guardianship of the children in their blended families, now face a common threat that transcends their personal conflicts. Jason brings his experience with criminal organizations and covert operations, while Dante offers the resources and authority of law enforcement. Together, they represent the Quartermaine family's best hope of preventing the complete transfer of ELQ assets to the Cassadine organization. The task before them is daunting. Ronnie has positioned herself perfectly, she's the legal owner of the Quartermaine property, she's gained the trust of key family members, and she has access to the inner workings of the family business. Any move against her must be calculated carefully, with ironclad evidence, or the Quartermaines risk looking like they're persecuting a woman whose only crime was being Monica's long-lost sister. Ronnie's greatest protection is the story she arrived with, the tale of two orphaned girls torn apart by circumstance. As long as family members believe that narrative, they'll resist any attempts to paint her as a villain. The involvement of Valentine Cassadine adds another layer of complexity to the situation. Currently imprisoned at Steinmauer for his various crimes, Valentine possesses knowledge about both the Cassadine family operations and Faison's final project. His meeting with Ronnie suggests he may be complicit in the plot against the Quartermaines, or perhaps he's being used as an unwitting source of information. Valentine's complicated history, as both a Cassadine insider and someone who has occasionally worked against the family's darker impulses, makes his role in this conspiracy difficult to predict. The resurrection of this plot also brings into focus Helena Cassadine's enduring legacy. Even in death, the notorious Cassadine matriarch continues to terrorize Port Charles through schemes set in motion years or even decades ago. Helena's curse on Luke and Laura Spencer's wedding day, witnessed by millions, established her as one of soap opera's most formidable villains. Her ability to plan multiple steps ahead, to position operatives and manipulate circumstances across years and continents, made her a threat that persisted long after her various deaths and returns. This latest revelation, that she placed a biological daughter into the foster care system specifically to create a weapon against the Quartermaines, represents Helena's strategic thinking at its most ruthless. The Quartermaine family now faces an existential crisis. Their famous Thanksgiving disasters and Christmas traditions, the comedic dysfunction that has made them beloved to General Hospital viewers for decades, suddenly seems quaint in comparison to the threat of total destruction. The mansion where generations gathered, where Lila Quartermaine provided warmth and wisdom, where Edward built his empire and Alan raised his sons, all of it now rests in the hands of someone who may view it as nothing more than a tactical objective in a larger war. For Brooke Lynn Quartermaine, who organized the welcome party for Ronnie, the revelation must be particularly painful. Her attempts to make Ronnie feel like part of the family, to honor what she believed were Monica's wishes, now appear tragically misguided. The same impulse that has driven the Quartermaines to take in everyone from Lila's kids to distant relatives has been turned against them, weaponized by someone who studied their patterns and knew exactly how to exploit their generous hearts. As this storyline unfolds, Port Charles holds its breath. Will Jason and Dante uncover the evidence they need to expose Ronnie's true identity and mission? Can the Quartermaine family overcome their internal divisions to present a united front against this threat? And what other surprises might emerge from Helena's long game? What other operatives, what other contingencies, what other schemes has she set in motion that won't reveal themselves until the moment of maximum impact? The battle for the Quartermaine legacy has begun, and the stakes have never been higher. In the shadow of Helena Cassadine's posthumous machinations, two of Port Charles's most iconic families are headed for a confrontation that will determine not just who controls ELQ, but whether the Quartermaine family as we know it can survive at all. Monica Quartermaine spent her life building and protecting her family's legacy. Now that legacy faces its greatest test, threatened not by corporate raiders or rival families, but by a woman who may be Monica's own flesh and blood, raised from childhood to bring about the Quartermain's downfall. The question that haunts everyone involved is simple but profound. In a family that has always defined itself by taking in outsiders and making them whole, how do you protect yourself from someone who has been trained to use that very generosity as a weapon? The answer to that question will determine the fate of the Quartermains and reshape the landscape of Port Charles for years to come. Next. In a stunning revelation that has left Port Charles reeling, a shocking flashback has exposed the most chilling conspiracy in General Hospital history. What viewers thought was a straightforward shooting investigation has transformed into a calculated web of manipulation, betrayal, and cold-blooded deception. The truth that emerged in the courtroom sent shockwaves through every corner of the fictional city. Michael Corinthos and Drew Kane Quartermain had been secretly working together from the very beginning. The master plan revealed. The flashback sequence laid bare the disturbing truth. Drew's shooting was never an attempted murder by Willow or Nina. It was a meticulously orchestrated scheme designed by Michael and Drew themselves. In a twist that defied all expectations, Drew had voluntarily agreed to be shot in a non-fatal location, sacrificing his own blood to help Michael achieve his ultimate goals. The conspiracy had multiple layers, each more sinister than the last. Michael's primary objective was to secure full custody of Wiley and Amelia while simultaneously consolidating his control over ELQ. For Drew, the motivation was equally calculated, eliminating Nina Reeves from his life, as she had become an obstacle to his burgeoning political career. Both men saw their alliance as a win-win arrangement, binding them in a pact of mutual benefit and shared darkness. What made the plot particularly cruel was how they manipulated everyone around them. Michael had already demonstrated his ruthlessness by planting evidence at Elizabeth's house, the gun used in Drew's shooting, setting up Willow to take the fall. His suspicious behavior when he visited Elizabeth's home had raised eyebrows, but no one suspected the depths of his deception until it was too late. Sidwell, the perfect scapegoat. Perhaps the most ingenious aspect of their conspiracy was how they positioned Jen Sidwell as the prime suspect. Sidwell, already established as a dangerous figure in Port Charles with connections to various criminal activities, made the perfect patsy. The conspirators calculated every detail to redirect suspicion toward him, creating a false narrative that would satisfy investigators while keeping their own hands clean. By framing the shooting within the context of Sidwell's ongoing vendetta against various Port Charles residents, Michael and Drew ensured that law enforcement would pursue the wrong lead. The plan was diabolically clever, use an existing threat to mask their own conspiracy. The encrypted evidence. Willow's discovery of the truth came through sheer determination and maternal instinct. Despite being arrested and facing attempted murder charges alongside Nina, something didn't sit right with her about Michael's sudden willingness to allow supervised visits with the children. That olive branch felt wrong, tainted somehow. Her suspicions led her to dig deeper, and what she uncovered shattered any remaining illusions about her ex-husband. Hidden in encrypted messages on devices Michael thought were secure, Willow found the smoking gun, detailed communications between Michael and Drew outlining their entire conspiracy. The messages revealed planning sessions, contingency strategies, and cold calculations about how to manipulate the legal system and public opinion. The encrypted evidence showed the true timeline of events. Michael and Drew had begun plotting weeks, possibly months, before the shooting ever occurred. They had war-gamed various scenarios, selected the optimal location for the shooting to ensure it appeared life-threatening while avoiding vital organs, and even rehearsed their conflicting public statements to make their supposed enmity seem authentic. Courtroom explosion. When Willow's attorney presented this evidence in court, the proceedings erupted into chaos. What had begun as an arraignment for Willow and Nina on attempted murder charges transformed into the exposure of one of the most calculated conspiracies Port Charles had ever witnessed. Nina's testimony had already taken an unexpected turn when she recanted her alibi for Willow, sending her daughter to Pentonville without bail. But when the encrypted messages were revealed, everything changed. The courtroom spectators gasped in disbelief as the full scope of Michael's manipulation became clear. Drew's reaction was particularly telling. The congressman, who had maintained his victim persona throughout the investigation, found himself suddenly exposed and enraged. His fury in court, purportedly directed at the unknown assailant, now appeared in a completely different light. He was angry not because he'd been shot, but because his carefully constructed conspiracy was collapsing around him. Port Charles in shock. The revelation of Michael and Drew's alliance sent shockwaves through every social circle in Port Charles. Those who knew Michael as Monica Quartermain's grandson, as Sonny Corinthos' son, struggled to reconcile the young man they thought they knew with the cold manipulator who would frame his children's mother and endanger his own family. Dante Falconeri had tried to warn his brother, confronting Michael at the Quartermaine mansion and urging him to turn himself in. But even Dante, in his capacity as Michael's brother rather than as a cop, hadn't grasped the full extent of Michael's ruthlessness. The discovery that Michael hadn't just framed Willow but had actually conspired with Drew from the beginning exceeded even Dante's worst fears. Carly Corinthos Spencer found herself torn between maternal loyalty and moral outrage. While she had initially understood Michael's anger toward Nina and his desire to protect his children, the revelation of his conspiracy with Drew, the same man who had betrayed her son by having an affair with Willow, defied all comprehension. The broader Port Charles community reacted with a mixture of horror and fascination. Michael's descent into villainy had been gradual, with warning signs that many now realized they should have heeded. His increasingly ruthless behavior in the custody battle, his cold calculations regarding his children's well-being, and his willingness to manipulate those around him had all pointed toward this moment. The arrests. As the evidence mounted and the conspiracy unraveled in real time during the court proceedings, law enforcement had no choice but to act. Both Michael Corinthos and Drew Kane Quartermaine were taken into custody on multiple charges, including conspiracy to commit fraud, evidence tampering, filing false police reports, and obstruction of justice. The arrests marked a stunning fall from grace for both men. Michael, who had recently won full custody of his children through what everyone now realized were fraudulent means, found himself facing the prospect of losing everything. Drew, whose political career was already controversial due to his personal scandals, saw his congressional seat become untenable as his criminal conspiracy came to light. But as the authorities led them away, courthouse observers noted something chilling: Michael's expression. While Drew appeared shocked and angry at the turn of events, Michael wore a subtle, almost imperceptible smile. It was the smile of a man who still believed he held the winning hand. The hidden fortune. That confidence wasn't unfounded. Even as he was being processed and booked, Michael knew what no one else yet suspected: he had been moving assets for months. Long before the shooting, as he developed his conspiracy with Drew, Michael had been secretly transferring portions of his wealth to offshore accounts and shell corporations. The Quartermaine fortune that should have been accessible to authorities for restitution, legal fees, and potential civil judgments had largely disappeared into a labyrinth of international financial structures. Michael had used his business acumen and ELQ connections to create an intricate web of holdings that would take forensic accountants years to untangle, if they could untangle them at all. This financial escape hatch represented the final layer of Michael's planning. He had never intended to simply win the custody battle and control of ELQ. He had prepared for the possibility of exposure and legal consequences. Even behind bars, he maintained the resources to live comfortably, hire the best legal representation, and potentially flee the country if the opportunity arose. The aftermath. As Port Charles absorbed the shocking revelations, questions swirled about what would happen next. Willow and Nina, who had been facing serious charges themselves, now appeared to be victims of an elaborate frame-up. Their legal situations would need to be reassessed entirely in light of the conspiracy's exposure. The custody arrangement for Wiley and Amelia fell into immediate question. With Michael in custody and facing serious criminal charges, the court would need to determine temporary guardianship. Willow's attorneys moved quickly to petition for emergency custody, arguing that she had been wrongfully deprived of her children through fraudulent means. Brooke Lynn Quartermaine and the rest of the Quartermaine family faced their own reckoning. Monica's death had already shaken the family's foundation, and now the revelation that Michael, the golden boy, the heir apparent, had orchestrated such a vicious conspiracy threatened to tear the family apart entirely. Drew's political career lay in ruins. The congressman who had weathered scandals involving affairs, drunken bar fights, and questions about his connections to Port Charles's criminal underworld now faced charges that no amount of spin could overcome. His fellow politicians in Washington distanced themselves immediately, and calls for his resignation echoed from every corner of his district. The escape plan. But Michael's subtle smile in the courtroom hinted at something more. While authorities believed they had their man in custody, Michael's preparations extended beyond hidden assets. Sources close to the investigation later revealed that Michael had been in communication with contacts who specialized in helping wealthy individuals disappear. His offshore holdings weren't just about preserving wealth, they were about creating a new life. In countries with no extradition treaties, with new identities already prepared, Michael had laid the groundwork for escape. The question wasn't whether he would try to flee, but when. Drew, by contrast, seemed genuinely shocked by the turn of events, suggesting he may not have been fully aware of the extent of Michael's contingency planning. Their alliance, built on mutual benefit, now appeared to have been more calculated on Michael's side than Drew had realized. Michael had used Drew as thoroughly as he had used everyone else. The sinister truth. As the full scope of the conspiracy continued to emerge in the days following the courtroom revelation, one truth became inescapable: Michael Corinthos had transformed into something his family barely recognized. The young man who had once been seen as the stable, responsible courtroom heir had embraced a darkness that rivaled the worst villains Port Charles had ever seen. His willingness to sacrifice Drew's health, to frame the mother of his children, to manipulate the legal system, and to coldly calculate every variable in pursuit of his goals revealed a sociopathic streak that horrified even those accustomed to Port Charles's dramatic criminal enterprises. This wasn't a crime of passion or a mistake made in anger; it was premeditated, methodical, and utterly ruthless. The conspiracy between Michael and Drew represented a new low for Port Charles, a city that had seen its share of schemes and betrayals. But the calculated nature of their plot, the involvement of innocent parties like Willow and Nina, and the manipulation of the children caught in the middle elevated this conspiracy to a level of villainy that would not soon be forgotten. As Michael sat in his cell, still wearing that enigmatic smile, Port Charles waited to see what would happen next. Would he successfully escape to his offshore sanctuary? Would the legal system finally hold him accountable for his actions? And most importantly, could Willow and her children ever recover from the betrayal of a man who should have protected them above all else? The answer to these questions remains uncertain, but one truth is clear: the alliance between Michael Corinthos and Drew Kane Quartermain will stand as one of the most shocking plot twists in General Hospital history, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous villains are the ones we never see coming until it's too late.